You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Do you think this is the end? Me and Steve were talking about this just before you were on the air. Will this be the end of people wearing costumes to the theater?
I wish I hope it's not, because midnight showings are fun, and they need to be fun. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be, and whatever it takes to keep them fun and keep people's spirits up when going to these events. I mean, here's the thing about this guy dressing up. This is the weirdest thing for me to think about, but this was a guy who put a lot of attention to detail in making sure that hundreds of people, including myself, did not walk out of that theater. I mean, if you heard about the plans, he didn't plan on anybody making it out. He planned on killing everybody in that theater. This is a guy who planned on blowing up his apartment, on making sure that hundreds of people suffered. And he had very concise in those details. He wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Yet you mean to tell me that he couldn't even get the Joker's hair color right?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been like, if I saw that guy at a movie theater and he told me he was dressed up as the Joker, I would say it's a pretty poor costume.
Yeah, and not only that, but he didn't have any makeup on either. He didn't have the right suit on. I mean, I'm not trying to nitpick these details because obviously they don't matter. But when I saw the pictures of that guy, I was thinking, that's just a bad hair dye. That's not the Joker at all.
That's not the Joker at all. It's that
Carrot Top.
I didn't know him, but that would have been kind of a red flag to me. That I mean, I guess no, it wouldn't. In retrospect, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. I would have just thought this is some jerk off with red hair. But I wouldn't have even imagined he was going to do anything. But like I said, I don't think this should ruin the experience of moviegoers. I know before people realized what was going on in my theater, there was a guy dressed as Batman in our theater, and I know there were jokes just being tossed around. I know somebody had shouted, "Save us, Batman!" And the guy stood up and ran, and somebody else had just kind of commented, they're like, so much for Batman. And going to the movies a midnight showing should be fun. It should be the kind of experience, like I went to a midnight showing of the Avengers, and I love going to these midnight showings because when you're going to a midnight showing, you're going with the obsessive fans. And as a professional wrestling fan, as somebody who rarely runs into somebody who is into the same thing, I love the experience of getting to talk with other people who are just as obsessive about these things as I am. And I really hope this doesn't ruin that movie-going experience because, like I said, there were other Batman fans there standing in line, getting to talk with other people, and it's like, this is going to be awesome. I hear they're redoing the Bane paralyzation scene. I hear, and we were just talking about all that stuff. We were just throwing things out from Batman comic books because those are the obsessive fans. When I saw the Avengers, it was the obsessive fans who went. And you don't get to see those in the everyday public. And so that's what makes that's what makes the midnight showing just a fun experience.
Part of the fun of those midnight showings is when you're going to things like the Avengers and you know that the hardcore fans are in the theater with you, and when Stan Lee makes the cameo, everybody pops at the same time because the theater is full of nothing but the hardest of hardcore fans. And if you just go to an average showing at any time of the day and Stan Lee comes out, you pop for it, and then everybody else looks at you like you're stupid. Like, you don't get that? And that is the fun of a midnight showing, and this shouldn't ruin midnight showings, but I fear for some people it might.
Christian Bale made an appearance. He basically entered the hospital via ambulance, so the media wouldn't know him, and he went through and visited the victims in the hospital. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I thought that I wouldn't have thought any less of Christian Bale had he not done that. But man, do I think a whole lot more. I just feel like, that honestly, that's the coolest thing ever. I mean, Batman showed up and, made the day for a lot of these people. And I think that's really cool. I think that's the coolest thing that anybody could possibly do right now. The only thing he could have done cooler was showing up as Batman.
Yeah, I don't think he would have got past the scare as the hospital just as Batman, but unless maybe if they gave him more heads up and noticed that Christian Bale as Batman was going to make an appearance. This is more just nonchalant. He didn't want the media to know it was, the actor, not the character. But, it's one of those things where you look back and you're like, wow, like he didn't have to do that. I know they canceled the premiere screening in France and another country, and he's like, you know what? I got time on my hands. I'm going to take the next flight to Colorado.
Yeah, I think that it's so cool. I think everybody who got to meet him, they deserve it, and it's just awesome. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Now, in your section, were people getting trampled, or was that just in other areas of the theater?
Definitely not in our section. It seemed like people were pretty orderly in getting out. I know that I never had to lose my brother at any point because, this is my bigger brother. This is my older brother. He's always the one to look out for me. I'll be the first to admit that, I was kind of hiding behind him the entire time. When I heard the shots, I grabbed his shoulders and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And he looked at me. He's like, are you scared? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm scared. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, I know gunshots when I hear them. And because he thought it was just like some little jerk off kid set off a firecracker or something in the theater, because when you hear something off to the right of you, you hear a couple of loud bangs and you see smoke. He was just thinking, some dumbass kids are probably trying to ruin the movie right now. And I'm like, no, that sounds like something serious, and I don't know what's going on, and I'm scared. And had he not been there, I don't know how much I could have held up. Props to my brother, by the way, young 20 to 40 Mr. Double Up, actually really, really kept it together. He was, I don't know if it was maybe because of his confusion as to what was going on, or he just puts on a really good front, or he legitimately wasn't scared, but he kept it together the entire time in ways that I can't even imagine doing. I was way too afraid for my family, way too afraid for just everything.
Yeah, and for me, that's an interesting note about the whole thing, is that since I'm friends with both of you on Facebook and you were both there at the same time, it's like I see what happened, on the news and everything, and I see all the stories about it, and then I see the two sets of eyes. I see your eyes and his eyes, and you were both there and you both saw the same thing, but you each have a little different take on what it was that, went on in the situation. Not saying they're different, but they're different perspectives, So for me,
right. I think we both had just two completely different understandings of what was going on. I mean, after we got out of the theater, it was just a whole lot of confusion. Everybody started heading toward their cars, and then I guess the police might have thought, this is my guess, is that they thought that there was still another perpetrator out there. And so, I drove that night, and we get in my car, and I had said to my brother, you know what? I think we should get out of the car, because I see police heading to every single car with guns, and I don't want a gun pointed at my head. So we start to motion out of the car, and then a police officer yells at me, "Get back in the car!" And I'm like, okay, get back in the car. And so we get in the car, and then another police officer comes to the car with a gun, and he's like, "Get out of the car!" And so we get out of the car, and then another police officer just goes, "Get away from the car!" So then we all just, all right, cool, we're getting away from the car. And so we just ditch the car, and we just head over to a section where everybody else was, because clearly I think there was a lot of confusion with the police. I think a lot of the officers really didn't have much of a clue as to what was going on either.
Wow. Now, I don't know Aurora very well. Is it like a small community in Colorado? Like, did you know any of the 12 victims that passed away in this tragedy?
I didn't know any of them, but I know people who knew them. Like, I have friends who on Facebook, who I'm close friends with. A friend of mine, as a matter of fact, for anybody who used to watch Now Playing Now, we used to have a fill-in host for Heidi named Nicole, aka Kiki. And Kiki used to, I guess she was friends with Sully, the first gentleman whose name was confirmed. And it's, she had posted immediately on Facebook when she found out. She's like, no, not. She said, my prayers out to the Sullivan family. I can't believe this is happening. He was the gentleman who worked at the theater just up the street. And that's actually how big of a theater the Century Theater was for Aurora, in that there are plenty of other theaters out in Aurora. There's the Southlands Theater. There's Movie Tavern. Actually, those are the only three I can think of. I guess Arapahoe Crossings, I don't know if that's technically Aurora anymore. But, there are multiple theaters in Aurora, and the fact that somebody who even worked at one of the other theaters was planning on going to Century, I mean, that's the main theater. It's right outside of the Aurora Mall. And it's been our theater since the day it opened in 1998.